Well, the reality is it's no different to buying a business anywhere else. The fundamentals are exactly the same.
Hi, my name's Ali Kane. I'm a freelance finance journalist and the host of the Buy That Business podcast. Each episode, we look at everything you need to know about buying and selling a business. Today, I'm joined by Dean DeMeyer from Finn Business Sales. Dean's an expert when it comes to buying and selling businesses in Tasmania. Dean lives in Hobart and he tells me the market for business sales in Tasmania often runs counter to the market for business sales on the mainland. What that means is that there's opportunities for both buyers and sellers in both markets. Welcome to the podcast, Dean.
Thank you, Ali.
So, Dean, do you get a lot of people from the mainland who want a tree change or a sea change and look to buy a business in Tasmania?
Well, pre-COVID, I would have said that just under about 50% of our inquiries for buying businesses came from mainlanders. Since COVID, I'd say that's probably jumped up to more 55 to 60%.
Wow. You're really seen as, a safe haven, aren't you?
Yes, we're very lucky. We have a moat around our island.
So what sort of buyers from the mainland are usually able to make a success of buying a business on the Apple Isle?
Well, interestingly, when you sell a business, you generally don't have a lot to do with people who bought the business afterwards. But we are very good at qualifying buyers and matching them up with particular businesses. So we sort of know through word of mouth that we haven't had any we've sold that have not been successful. Being a small community, it's quite easy to keep track of businesses. But we vet them so heavily, the buyers, before we sell businesses to them, that we know they're going to be successful.
Tell me about some of the best businesses that you've bought or sold during your time as a business broker.
Yeah, well, one of the most successful ones, we sold a bookshop during COVID, which one, bookshops are not very popular, and two, during COVID was even worse. But we were able to sell it even though the landlord just prior to settlement decided to sell the building. So it wasn't a large sale, but it was a very sort of difficult sale, which we were able to manage the whole process for the buyers and the sellers. The sellers tended to panic a few times, and we were able to use our experience to meet with them and say, don't panic, this is what's going to happen. The landlord will investigate, he'll get advice, and then he'll come back. And so it all worked out and we were able to get the transition done. So that was not the largest, but it was more fulfilling for us because we were able to use all of our experience to get a result for the buyer and the seller.
So in general, what's the market for businesses like at the moment in Tasmania?
Well, when COVID started, we in April, there was the lockdown in Tassie, and essentially, everyone stopped, everything stopped. But May ended up being our second biggest month for the year. So it was really good for selling businesses. The problem is we were having problems getting people to list them for sale because they had a perception that no one would buy. And as a consequence, we ran out of stock.
Yeah.
Eventually, we've now got to the situation where people are now listing for sale. So I've got 10 appraisals on my desk right now to do this week. So there's a lot more stock to sell. We're getting a lot more inquiries, particularly from the mainland, as I said before. So it's pretty good at the moment.
Do you think that the more recent lockdowns in Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne have sort of driven up demand from mainland buyers for Tasmanian businesses?
It certainly has, but unfortunately, people can't get here to look at the businesses. It's not so much the lockdown, it's the fear of another lockdown that causes the problem. So I've got quite a few independent grocery shops that are very popular, but I can't get people down here because of the lockdowns in Victoria and New South Wales. We fully expect that when there's enough vaccinations and they open the borders back up with confidence, that we're going to be inundated with inquiries from the mainland.
Do you ever sell a business without being able to show it to the buyer?
We do. Generally, you'll get overseas people who would like to migrate to Tasmania, and I've got one this morning where we've got a small Asian grocery, and the people have not seen it, but basically saying to us, "We're a cash buyer, and when can we settle?"
Is that unusual?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we do get a lot of migration inquiries from overseas. There's an increasing Asian population in Hobart. So, there's a lot of family connections and a lot of money available. It's a matter of matching them up with the right businesses, though.
I imagine that when the borders reopen, then it will really be boom time for business sales in Tasmania, for the overseas borders, I mean.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, and we're trying to make sure we've got plenty of stock for when that happens.
So you've talked about grocery stores. What are some other popular businesses that you're able to sell in Tasmania? I can imagine hospitality, tourism businesses are some of the popular companies that you do sell.
Yeah, there's a lot of people trying to get out of them at the moment, but and we're probably not pursuing them. It's the COVID-resistant type businesses that are really popular at the moment. So online businesses where someone probably works from home, they're very popular. They've got an increasing multiple as well. As I said, the independent supermarkets, anything that's service related where they have recurrent income, like an accounting business or financial planning, those sorts of things. People like the guaranteed revenue so that, people have still got to lodge a tax return, whether it's COVID or not. So those sort of businesses are very popular.
What are the advantages of running a business in Tasmania? I can imagine that there are some, especially because you have been unaffected by COVID compared to the mainland.
Yes, it's sort of, the advantages are that it's, situation normal down here. In like Hobart in particular has basically had very little COVID. So we've sort of just continued on as if nothing has ever happened, really. So there's that sort of consistency. The lifestyle obviously is very attractive. It's cheaper to live, easier to get to work. The weather's pretty good. Everyone has a perception that it rains here, but it's actually cold. It's not wet. Lifestyle issues, lots of private schooling. Hobart would have more private schools than public. So, there's all those sort of things that are very appealing for people on the mainland who want to relocate. Any
downsides to living in Tasmania? I'm sure you're pretty biased. It's a gorgeous place.
The downside, well, I think it's the perception that we get from the mainland. So if we list very large businesses for sale, as soon as we mention it in Tassie, we get a lot of pushback from the mainland because large companies, so it depends who the buyer is. If a strategic buyer that's a corporate, they'll generally push back because it's in Tassie. There's a perception that Bass Strait causes all sorts of problems. We also, one of the other things is a lot of people in Tasmania overstock their businesses because their mentality is that you've got to get it across Bass Strait. So therefore it makes selling a business with a lot of stock different. But what we do there is we just advise the sellers up front that you need to be smarter in how you sell the business. So you might sell it in installments so that you can get rid of that stock, because some of the businesses, I tend to think people are more enthusiasts than business people because they carry so much stock, and then it becomes difficult to sell it to someone because people can't borrow to buy all this stock.
It's too expensive.
Yeah, the banks just won't give them the money. So we have to be clever in the way we structure the deal, but we can still do it. We get it done.
So, Dean, we're coming to the end of our time together today. What's your best piece of advice for someone who's thinking about buying a business in Tasmania?
Well, the reality is it's no different to buying a business anywhere else. The fundamentals are exactly the same, return on investment, recurrent revenues, those sorts of things. But the best piece of advice I can get anyone who wants to buy a business in Tasmania is to buy it through us. And that might sound a bit biased, but the reality is we do a lot of due diligence on businesses before we list them. So if people from the mainland want to buy a business in Tassie, they can sort of rest assured that they're buying a business that's already had some due diligence done, because we only list them if we think it's going to get through an external in-depth due diligence. So we do that right up front. My business partner and I are both chartered accountants, so we know what to look for and we know how to present it. So we're probably confident that if people buy a business through us, they're going to get a good business that's had someone already cast their eyes over it.
It's like you've done all the hard work, really.
Yeah, well, there's a bit of self-preservation there. I mean, when you sell a business, the broker's at risk. So if you can eliminate some of that risk, we tend to do it because based on our experience, we've got the skills to do that. So we do it out of self-interest.
Dean, that's all we've got time for today, but you've certainly piqued my interest about buying a business in Tasmania. It's such a gorgeous place to live. I can imagine it would also be a fantastic place to run a business. So thanks everybody for your time today. Please do get in touch if you have any questions or story ideas. Our contact details are at the bottom of the podcast. See you next time.